Hi, this is Charlie Mato-Toyela with Blue Bear Flutes. Of course, you know our website, bluebearflutes.com, and I'm sure several of you have found us on Instagram under Blue Bear Flutes, or rather at Blue Bear Flutes, as well as Facebook and everywhere else in the world. Any which way, thank you very much for coming to watch our videos on Native American flute making. This video is going to be about making a quena. And I know I've got other videos about quenas and what have you. The quena is a Central American, Native American flute. It normally has 6 holes in the front and 1 hole in the back. Although there are so many different types and styles of Native American flutes, it wouldn't surprise me in the least if you found a few a little different. A lot of the original flutes that were played in the Americas were rim-blown flutes that were made something like this, except for maybe a little longer, and a lot of them only had 4 fingerings. That was the type that really inspired the whole Native American flute creation, I think, after about somewhere around 4,000 or 5,000 years ago. They were originally played by blowing across the end of the hole, like that. The quena has this nice little slot in it right here, though, that makes it a little bit easier for the beginner especially to learn to play. And basically just a major scale. Now, we could debate whether or not original quenas were made in major or minor or some other type of scale all day long, but the fact of the matter is, more than likely, this is a modification after the colonization of Central America. Having said that, 6 holes in the front, 1 on the back, go G to G, and that's the scale. Plus, of course, you can play chromatically, you can play minor, you can play everything on this as well. The typical quenas these days are made like this one. Except for this one's, of course, made out of river cane, which is something that may not grow in Central America. It does grow in all of the Americas in some form or another, and the type that they have is kind of like our sawgrass, I believe. There's a number of different types of cane that are indigenous to the Americas. Anyway, we're going to make ours out of a piece of pear wood, which came down in my yard after a hurricane. I had a huge pear tree, and this is just one of the limbs I saved to make something neat out of. And I know somebody very special who is holding a camera right now that really would like to have a quena made out of it. So that's where we're going today. If you want to watch, we'll go ahead and take this trip and see if we can't get this quena knocked out in a short time. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to flatten it down a little bit so I can chop it on my table saw. As I've learned, you can cut logs on the table saw. It's just not as fun and certainly not safe. There are ways to do it, of course, and I've done it all my life, but at this point, for whatever reason, I prefer to shove them through this thing first. And of course, the planer is not a very super safe product to be using with anything giant, but it is made to cut that deep, so here we go. So you probably noticed that I planed it down to a certain thickness. That thickness, of course, is the depth my table saw blade will cut. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and rough it down into a couple of blocks, and from there we'll cut it to the size of one of our key G or F sharp flute blanks. And the reason we do that is following the pattern. The inside diameter of this G or F sharp flute blank is about the same size as this G flute quena. For that reason, we like to kind of make it on the same pattern. It'll be a lot easier to produce a product that's going to be, you know, the same size on the inside. Any which way, if you want to watch me cut this guy down to size next, I had these somewhere. Might have to send that piece to my friend that makes those wonderful turkey calls. It's about the size of the wood that he likes to use. So now I've got a good shape and size to trim up however I need to. Let's take it down just a pinch. I realize too I need a new saw blade. I think I've sharpened this one about as much as I can. And it's ready just to be put down. Okay, I think too I'm going to clean it up on my planer, so I might make it just a little bit bigger. That'll give me something I can plane down to the right size. Gives me a nice, beautiful board and something else I might be able to work with on another project. We'll have to save him for later. It's a really pretty piece of wood though. It has a nice grain and color to it. It actually darkens up. It turns quite red when it dries, as you can see up here on the end. But while it's wet, it's a lot easier to work with. So let's take this back over to the planer, clean it down and slab off a couple of these boogers. What do you say? So if you notice here on my G pattern, I've got some notes scribbled on there. 3/16 is actually the fence setting, and then 10.9. I know those of you who have not seen all of my videos, I actually work in standard and metric all the time. And we try to do it that way for a number of reasons, but I find that metric is a little more accurate on the small end and standard's better on the large end of things. With my particular level of accuracy, which isn't necessarily that great, but it's what I'm looking for. So to tell you what that means, basically the depth of this guy here, right now it's 9.5, and I'm going to turn him up to 10. That's a little much. About 10.9, 10.95, that's good right there. And if you look down on the bottom here, might be a little dusty, there's your 3/16. That's how far back my fence is. Keeping that in mind, this router is not the one that was designed for this Ryobi router table. As a matter of fact, the router that I'm sporting today is a Rigid brand, which is one of Home Depot's, I guess, flagship tools, and it's been good so far. I've gone through, I guess in my career of flute making, somewhere near 25 or maybe 30 routers. I probably would have gone through a lot more had I made as many flutes 20 years ago as I did 10 years ago. But these days we make a lot of flutes, and we have countless routers that do this. So this guy doesn't get wore out as much as he used to, but he still gets used quite a bit. Having said that, that bit will stay in there until it's done, and then I'll just replace it with another 3/4 inch router bit. This is a core box bit, or a cove, or a flute. The difference is a cove a lot of times have a bearing, a nose bearing on the top of them, whereas this core box does not. It's made to be cutting round slots into things. And the package says that it's 3/8, but that's a 3/8 radius. It's roughly somewhere in the 3/4 margin with regards to the width. So that's kind of what I'm looking for there. And this one is about ready to be changed. So if you see some burning or smoking on it, forgive me. I will show you with regards to this particular setting on this size of wood, we're actually going to run it through this way, and then we're going to come back, turn it around, and send it back through the other way. If you don't know anything about routers, one thing that you really need to know is they're designed to cut going in one direction. I used to always keep a mark drawn on my router table in case somebody else used it, because if you put the piece in there and go this way, it's going to shoot right down off the end of the table. However, when I cut through the first time and I go to cut through the second time, because of where I'm cutting, it works better if I go that way. And having said that, it's a little confusing, but I prefer to use the 3/4 inch router bit rather than finding the exact one for my 7/8 diameter inside, because this guy here I can buy at Lowe's, Home Depot, and Ace Hardware, which are my 3 biggest chain hardware stores near me, and there's lots of them. I don't have to worry about special ordering something or keeping 20 of them on hand. I can drive down, and if one store doesn't have it, I go to the other 4. And I say 4 because we actually have 2 Lowe's in our town. But anyway, so that's why I have this size bit. In case you haven't seen any of our other flute making videos, that's the reason I like to stick with this one. And I'll show you basically how round it becomes on the inside. Then we'll run cleaning, sanding drum up inside of the flute and come back out, and that'll make it perfectly round. So you want to watch? Here we go. So I'm pretty happy with this. It actually turned out really nice. I am going to treat this just as I do all of our other flutes. You can see where some of the wood didn't come up right here because of the depth of my bit where it's designed to cut, but I'll take care of that in just a moment. I'm going to go ahead and drill my holes, and then I will burn the inside of it, which is something I've done for years and years to help smooth and also to cauterize a lot of the wood. It hardens the wood and also makes it a little slightly more impervious to moisture, which is a good thing. But we'll do that, then we'll glue and clamp it together, and we'll come back. I'll probably have a different shirt on, and we'll turn it around. Okay, so we're back, and of course, new shirt as promised. This guy here is dried and cured out pretty good. He's got some cracks deformed because it's in the drying process now that I've taken this raw wood out of a log. You can see some of those cracks down here, but I'm not really worried about them. We'll take care of this as we plane it and round it off. But that's our next step, is to take it over to the planer and get it down so that it's nice and square without taking too much off of the sides. And not making it too thin-walled. After we do that, then I'll round the edges off, sand it a little bit on the lathe, and I think we'll be just about ready to tune it. So she's shaping up a little bit now. It's a little bit more round, as you can see, and I still see a little bit of problem here with these cracks forming, so I'm going to go back and drop a little bit of super glue into all those cracks, which will pretty much freeze them in their place, and then it's going to go on the lathe and become as round as humanly possible, I think. But you can look at it, it's pretty nice, nice curves and nice shape, good clean wood, really a pretty piece of wood there. It's going to have a nice stripe in it, which I didn't count on. but that's part of the heart of this limb that we cut out of the pear tree. So I'm looking forward to seeing what that looks like. Our usual mixture we make for just about everything. It's sunflower and tea tree oil mixed together. It really brings out the color of that wood. Green. I think that looks pretty good here. And this is some of our wax that we use on everything, of course. So next I'm going to cut the ends off of it at roughly the area I believe they should be in relative size and shape to the Quena that we used as a pattern, and then we'll get started on the mouthpiece area. So it turned out to be a really nice looking tube. The inside's really great too. I don't know if you'll be able to see it as well as I can, I guess in my mind, and knowing that I'm going to run the sander through it, and after I do that, it'll be really a good size and shape. Has a nice thickness of a wall there that you can see. A lot of good stuff going on. And I think running the sander through, you'll probably be able to tell. That's going to be pretty nice here. I think I might even leave it turned too. Usually in the case of a river cane, I'll make it a little bit thinner right here, but this particular wood, I think it'll make a nice nice resonance if I don't. So next, I'm going to use the sanding rod to clean the mouthpiece area a little bit, and then I'm going to just kind of cut a ridge around on the inside so that it's a little bit smoother. And then we'll start to sand that part. That's something you definitely want to see. Okay, so now I have a really nice round tube inside. It's just amazing. Looks beautiful on the outside. And the mouthpiece has my little slant that I like to keep on it. There's different types of Quenas. I believe there's like Ecuadorian, Peruvian, Bolivian. Some people keep it really slanted. Some have it just straight across. It just depends on where you're at and who you're dealing with. But most Quenas do have the little notch cut in here, and that's something that I'm going to do with my Dremel. The rotary tool makes quick work of this. You have to be careful not to take too much out. This kind of thing you usually mess up the first time. You don't want to do this on a $300 pear wood Quena. And no, I'm not suggesting we're going to sell these on our website. We do sell a river cane Quena on our website, which is probably one of the most reasonably priced ones you'll find online anywhere. But the one made out of this material, or any hardwood, I'm not, at this time, not really interested in selling hardwood Quenas. There are other suppliers of those. They make some pretty nice ones. We cater mostly to beginning flute players, especially with regards to this instrument. I'm sure there's a few people out there that sell some beautiful wooden Quenas. Let's see if this sounds okay. that's pretty good, but I want it to be just a little bit louder. There we go. I think that might be it right there. If you have a really expensive Quena at home, you probably don't want to break out the sandpaper and say, I'm going to make this thing louder right now. Bad idea. Not unless it's one that you're in the process of making. Anyway, I think this guy here, sound-wise, let me go with some fine. Boy, that sounds better. No more dust collector on. So this is just some 220 sandpaper here that I'm using to finish up the mouthpiece area, and there we go. Yep, definitely 220. Sand a little bit on the inside, sand the shape, sand the flat area here of the mouthpiece, or sound area, or fipple if you have to call it that. Well, if people want to call that a fipple. There are no Clydesdales involved in the making of this. Yeah, I know. Y'all are thinking to yourself, what the heck is he talking about now? Okay, and I think that's pretty good. Let's just hit the mouthpiece with some of this stuff real quick. Just to... I think that's got it. Feels really good. Let's see. So used to playing that big one. Plus it's difficult to cover the holes when they're so tiny. Might need to take out just a little bit more then. Oh yeah, there we go. That might make a difference. It also helps to cover these holes as best you can when you're trying to cover all and make the bottom tone. Having a slightly larger hole than our pre-drill size there probably helps. Just a second. I think I may go ahead and oil and wax this a little bit. That's usually something I do at the last step of the making process. Except for sometimes when making the mouthpiece, it's a good idea to have it as slick as humanly possible. Always have to be careful with this area too, because it is a typically a soft, weak point of any Quena. Being that it has to be made so that it's as sharp as it is. We'll come back and clean that discoloration off with some steel wool in a moment too. That's a good tone. So I think we're done with the Dremel. And next we just got to hit this tuner. If you want to take a look at the tuner while I'm tuning this, I'll show you the process of burning the holes out, but I'd like you to see where we're at. So I have a feeling that's about an F, and I'm going to need to cut about a ½ inch off the bottom of this thing. F sharp, not too bad. So taking this over to the bandsaw, and I'm going to clip it off just enough that it's going to turn into a G, and we'll go from there. I have a feeling this is going to be a flat G, but that's okay. We'll tune it up the rest of the way on the sander. Not too shabby. One other thing that I don't think to show people in our videos sometimes is that when you sand a flute and the sawdust goes inside of it like that, it actually slows the tone, slows the airflow down, which lowers the tone. So I'm going to blow it out, and it'll probably be just right at a G. That's good. Let's take it back and burn some holes in it. When we burn the holes in it, I know I've said this in other videos, but those of you who might be watching this video for the first time ever having seen one of our Native American flute making videos, we burn the holes in all of the material that we use, except for PVC when we use it. But for the sake of cauterizing the fingering, this keeps the airflow consistent, constant, also allows it to just completely avoid any moisture issues on those areas. It's the same reason that we burn the track out and a number of other things that we use our burning tools for. But cauterizing that material there will ensure that it's much less likely to be affected by humidity and just general moisture in your breath. So that's an A flat. We're going to burn the hole out a little bit. Bring it a little bit closer to its A. Those of you looking at the tuner saying, that's a G sharp, not an A flat. Okay, just a little bit more. That's probably it there. So that's a B flat. I'm going to go ahead and bring that one up, which is this note right here. Bring it up to a B, and I'm going to go ahead and change out the small burning rod. Always sounds funny. For the larger burning rod, because we may have to use that on a hole or two. If you've noticed the tuner going very sharp, it's because of my attack on the note. The attacks are usually a sudden burst of air which causes it to play sharp. What matters is that steady stream of air. As I had told you previously, the C key here is almost always small, somewhere around that 3/16 size. Just wanted to clean it up a little bit there. So my D is a little flat. The B is still out of tune. I'm going to go back to him in just a second. If this is going to be the first or one of the first flutes you have ever tuned, I would suggest getting that B in tune before you go to the next note. In my particular case, I mean, I could probably burn these holes to where I believe they should be, and they'll be really close based on the size, the way it sounds right now, how long the distance is from here to there, and what that first fingering size was. I have a good idea how the rest of them are going to go, but you know, once again, it comes just with experience and not something that a machine can tell you how they should be made or what have you. Part of the time, too, I may not be holding my mouth just right. As my dad used to say, it's one of his sayings. But as you hold your mouth differently, your embouchure also causes the flute to go in tune or out of tune. So I'm going to hit that C key just a little bit more. I tend to like flutes to be tuned a pinch sharp. Because most of our customers play with a little less air than I tend to. A flat E also needs to be burned out. All these holes above that C usually need to be burned out a little bit. The E is probably going to be about 1/4 of an inch. This F sharp here is probably going to be between 1/4 and 5/16. And the G hole in the back usually matches the C hole in the front. So just a couple of flat notes to work on. I know I'm not spending as much time showing you how to tune these holes exactly, but most of you have watched so many of our videos on tuning, and some of you get tired of watching me do this stuff in slow-mo, regular speed that is. So let's see if we can't get this B out a little bit. There she goes. I could feel like that's the right note. And I think my G's probably a little flat still. This F sharp's probably a little flat. The E might be still a little flat. Let's hit it and see what happens. So my G is almost there. The two top notes in the front need to be a little bit bigger. And in the case of doing my fine tuning, I might wait on that G, even with my experience level, before we finish tuning these. I'll wait to tune him last, because that one does jump sometimes, depending on the size of these other fingerings here. You see how he had gone up here about maybe 10 cents already, and I haven't even tuned the G yet. I still need to make the F sharp a little bit, the G a little bit, and I think the rest of them were pretty much okay. We'll check them one more time though. Hit this guy one little instance here. There we go. That dude there even sounds like he's perfectly in tune. I'll go ahead and do this so you can get a nice image of it playing. And yes, I am buffing off some of my previously oiled and waxed work I did, but that is not a problem. Notice that the steel wool actually brings the shine back to it pretty good. And then I'll oil it one time inside and out. Steel wool on previously buffed and oiled and waxed wood actually does better, in my opinion, than it does, well, this is fine, like 4.0 I think, does better than it would on plain wood. Yeah, I see some shine coming in on this guy. Now, some of this black we might not be able to defeat. This is from burning and cauterizing the wood, and then the vapors shooting up through the pores of the wood. I have it in two spots here, and it's not really a big deal. If I was majorly concerned about it, I would sand this thing, but since I had already oiled and waxed and buffed it to get it started there, I'm going to leave it like that. I think it still looks really beautiful. Might even add a little bit to it. One thing I never talk about with any of you watching me make these flutes is that as these flutes age, they change in look, and depending on how much you play them. I mean, I can really spot a flute that's been played, but they do change with their age, and in so many ways become more beautiful as they get older. So let's oil and wax it real quick. one last time, and I think I can play you a little bit on here. There we go. Wipe the excess of that off. A little bit on the inside. Oiling the inside of this guy is kind of a trick because you've got holes in the top and the bottom, and letting it run down a little bit there. Looks like it's almost to the bottom. Run down a little bit there. There we go. Okay. Sometimes too, I'll run one of my cleaning rods through it. Some of these cleaning rods have so much oil and wax built up on them, they help to clean it off pretty good and stabilize the consistency of the coating inside. And just a little bit wax on the outside, I think is going to do it. There we go. Let's see. Now that is a really pretty pear wood Quena. Take kind of a closer look at some of the color and the mouthpiece. Shape and design. A lot of Ecuadorian Quenas, you'll notice, have either a ring around here or they'll have a alpaca, or maybe truthfully it's probably a vicuna or guanaco, but it's either an alpaca or a llama leg bone up here for the mouthpiece, because the leg bone originally was what Quenas were made out of thousands of years ago, but being such a hard material, it vibrates really nice and makes a beautiful sounding flute. So a lot of people inlay, or rather, I guess, supersede the actual wooden part of the flute itself up here with a leg bone of an alpaca or llama. This guy, though, I think it's ready to give it its test run. Let's see. Pretty flute. My mouth's so dry. But any which way, I think it's turned out great. I'm very pleased with it. Only a few more things. I might run my buffing rod through there a little bit more. I see that there's some minor discontinuity with the oiling and waxing, but otherwise I think this was a great construction and great flute build. I'm very pleased with it. So I hope that any of you who have been thinking about making a Quena or a Quenacho or some type of Central American flute, as we have made a couple of those now. If you haven't seen it, we actually had a pan flute video. The pan flute in question was actually made in a minor pentatonic scale, which I'll probably be making one of these here very soon the same, because originally I believe most of the flutes of the Americas were minor pentatonic in nature. With regards to this particular flute, this is made in the style of common Quenas today, which is how you want to be able to play a lot of the El Condor Pasa and all of our favorite songs that we really like to hear on the Quena. You want to be able to play it in that major scale, because today that's how they're typically played. So this flute should last forever. I think it's going to be around for a while. It is a lot of fun to play, and I'm sure that the recipient will absolutely love it, as I can see the smile on her face right now. So I hope that this has found you guys well. I hope you've enjoyed our video. Of course, keep in mind we do have lots of Native American flute making videos on every aspect of the subject. If you want to learn more about making the sound hole area of a typical Native American flute, or how to make the fingerings and even clay whistles that we're working on as we speak. I've been making clay whistles for a while, and we finally decided to start putting out videos on it, so you'll see more of those. And once again, very interesting, beautiful sounding instrument, something I'm very proud of myself, and I'm hoping that the recipient will be too. So you guys take care. Happy flute playing, happy flute making, those of you out there that have taken on this burden in life, and I wish you the best. Thanks for watching. This is Charlie Mato-Toyela signing out for Blue Bear Flutes and BlueBearFlutes.com. See you again soon.